Nation.
All right, we are indeed back. In studio, outstanding guest Andy Luger, kind enough to stop by once again. And as I mentioned, if you have questions, we might be able to squeeze some of those in. Several have actually already come in via the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line at 64686. Welcome back to the program. Good to have you back.
Yeah.
I know you. I can't remember if we talked about this before. Do you embrace this kind of cold? I mean, you're Northeast guy, right?
Yeah.
Originally. So is it, or does this kind of cold get obnoxious to you?
Every time.
Every time.
Are there people that embrace this?
Well, probably not as much as they pretend, I'm guessing.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's some people bothered by it more. Bothered enough that they say they could leave, because you could leave. You could go other places. I mean, you're established enough. You could end up being a big shot attorney anywhere. Pretty much at this point, couldn't you?
That's a nice thought. I love living here.
Yeah, that's clear.
This weather is stupid, but I love living here, and I've lived here for a long time, and I'm not going anywhere. I've got a cold, so I sound a little off, but I'm not going anywhere. But I don't know how you embrace this.
Well, I think people lie to themselves.
Okay. I embrace the state. I embrace what we can do here.
Right.
I love it here. I hate this.
Okay. That's honest. See, I think that's honest.
I try to be.
You're not one of us, though, because you weren't born here.
No.
Neither am I, and I've been told that over and over. I'm approaching 40 years here, and that's still not long enough, I was told.
Yeah.
Including by the late, great Sid Hartman a long time ago.
Whenever I go back,
I would never be one of us.
Good for him. And he, I knew him a little bit.
I bet you did.
He was very good friends with my wife's grandfather.
Really?
Yeah. My wife's grandfather was a football player at the U. Lou Gross, big Lou Gross.
Okay.
And they were very, very close. All the way till the end.
Really?
Yeah. So I got to know Sid a little bit through Grandpa Lou.
Didn't exactly welcome me to town when anybody else who's a writer or a columnist is the enemy. Even though if you work for the same newspaper, it's supposed to be if they work for another newspaper. That's just the nature of Sid. Very competitive. Speaking of competitive, your Vikings haven't been very lately.
No.
But you have a message, I think, that you would like to convey, and we'll get to the other stuff, so don't worry. I know a lot of people want to get to the other stuff. We will. But a message, an urgent one that you think is important to convey surrounding the proper approach with J.J. McCarthy.
Yes. So this season's over. That's not rocket science. But the rest of the season, to me, is the preseason for next year. Maybe you guys have already. I haven't been listening as much as I probably should.
Well, that hurts.
Okay. Well, I have a job.
Yeah, you're kind of busy. Yeah, I understand.
But this is the beginning of the preseason. And what we need to do, seems to me, we, meaning all of us who care about the team, is just figure out where we can go with this guy. And to me, that means throw the ball. And I know you're big on running the ball. And in the past, I agreed with you. You should have been doing that more. But
at this point, you're saying
4th and 1 with the other guy, and we get the Garrow Yepremian pass. But this time, and is he really a Brosmer guy?
He is the original Brosmer Brownstone guy.
The other guy.
Yeah.
I mean, his name's Max Brosmer, Mr. Luger.
No, good.
His name is Max Brosmer.
It's not Yepremian?
The other guy.
There,
All right. Yeah. So nobody knows what we're talking about.
No, we've invoked a dated reference once or twice before.
Okay. Because that's right. When you're watching the game, that's what you thought about.
I did, kind of.
Look it up. It
that's
was
true.
a Super Bowl.
So your point is,
throw the ball.
Find out.
Can he get it to Jefferson?
Yes.
He's got these great receivers. What can he do? Throw simple patterns, whatever it is. Don't worry so much about are we going to win or lose. I don't believe in throwing the rest of the season to get a draft pick. But let's just test him out in different situations. And again, nobody asked my advice. This is, KOC doesn't call me and say, Luger, what do you think? But this has been on my mind. Let's get him back there throwing the ball, testing out different patterns, and see what we can do. I think that would also be good for Jefferson. Let's try to get the ball to Jefferson. We have the best receiver in the league. It's now become ridiculous that we don't even throw to him.
Yeah.
So that's my view.
I think that's very insightful. I don't disagree with it. I still think you don't want to run the risk of traumatizing the kid if he's throwing it 62 times and getting sacked 8 times, because I also don't think he's a person who's going to stay healthy all that easy. But I get what your point is, and the one liberating aspect to being 4-8 is the pressure to that extent is off.
Right.
It really is. I mean, you're not, even though they did not intend to be in this position, that's the position they're in. So go about your business just trying to have little victories within games. That's what you're looking for, correct?
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to see, because I still believe in him, and I may be in the minority on this. So I don't know where you're at.
I'm still willing to watch. I've not given up on him. No, I have not.
So I'm a little bit beyond willing to watch.
I'm a little worried what some of the analytics indicate, but yeah.
It's still really his first, whatever, 7-8 games he's played, whatever it is. I just think you got to test it out. I don't want him to get hurt. All of that stuff. But let's find out before the preseason, before the next season. We waited so long for this season, I did at least, with anxious anticipation, and now it's gone. So that's my view.
Do you have are you a Vikings fan who suffers from any Sam Darnold envy,
no.
Any Daniel Jones envy, any Aaron Rodgers envy?
No, I despise those thoughts because, wait, Dan, let's go back to the end of last season.
Right.
How many people were clamoring to re-sign Sam Darnold after the last
playoff debacle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last 2 games were a debacle. Everybody sort of said that's the real Sam Darnold. I got nothing against Sam Darnold, and I hope he does great. I just think that we're reinventing history. I did not hear anybody say that's our franchise quarterback. So to reinvent it and say, look how great he's doing this season. And by the way, I don't think he's a Super Bowl quarterback. He's better than what we've got. But you invest in the future, you pick your future, you stick with it, you do the best you can. At some point, if it's not working, you give up and move on, but I'm not there.
How old were you on December 4, 1977?
I was born in 59.
Okay. So do you have much... Were you a Vikings fan then?
No, I was I was living by December of 77, I was already in college.
Okay.
I was an Amherst college football fan. We were undefeated as a freshman team, just in case anybody was checking. I was a Giants fan, which there wasn't much of back then.
Right.
But I kind of enjoy. I think I told you this story, how I met Alan Page when I moved here.
Yep.
I enjoyed the Vikings. I'm not one of those people who thinks there's some scar or scarlet letter for having lost 4 Super Bowls. My teams didn't get to the Super Bowl. So I always admired the Vikings. And plus you played outside. It was freezing cold like we've talked about. I thought that was great.
I bring up the date because I'm reminded by a good friend of the program from the Flynn family, Dan Flynn, December 4, 1977, what was then the greatest comeback or largest comeback in National Football League history. The Vikings erase a 24-0 third-quarter deficit and beat the Niners at the Met 28-27. Rookie quarterback Tommy Kramer enters early in the 4th and throws 3 touchdown passes, including the 69-yard game winner to Sammy White with 1 minute, 38 seconds to go. So you probably don't have much recollection of that.
I don't remember Tommy Kramer being the guy who would throw that many touchdown passes. Nothing against Tommy Kramer.
But be careful because he listens.
Yeah, I know.
So you might hear from him.
I've met him. Okay. Nice guy.
Yes.
I just don't remember him being the guy who would throw,
He had moments. He had his moments for sure.
I believe in JJ. I'm putting that on the record.
No, you're trying to be consistent. You're saying that's the guy.
And I also believe in KOC.
Until you turn on him.
I'm not going to turn on him.
You won't turn on him.
If he really can't do it, you call the question.
Yeah.
But I believe in him.
But all right, let me ask you it this way.
All right.
Do you have to, how much more do you have to see the rest of this season to say, yes, we're starting training camp with him and him alone, again designated as the guy. No competition. It's him. Because that's the question moving forward that affects a lot of people, including Justin Jefferson and this whole operation based on how old this team is. That do you just give him the job again, or do you bring in a veteran that at least has a chance? How much does Andy Luger have to see the rest of the season?
I got to see some improvement, and I've got to see progression. And then I kind of want to hear what Jefferson says. I want to hear what the guys on the field say, because they're going to see it better than I am.
They're all saying wonderful things, but they've said that from the beginning.
But we're going to know what Jefferson really thinks at the end. I mean, he's in the prime of his career. If he sees a future.
Well, if it was Chris Carter and then Randy Moss here, we already know.
We know.
They're
gone.
For sure.
Yeah,
that's it.
They're gone. Diggs, they're gone.
That's true, too. Because he is unusual in that regard.
The other thing I want them to do is stop fumbling.
Yeah. We have a takeaway turnover ratio problem. We do. I think we're either last or second to last in the league on turnovers.
Somebody gains 10 yards on the ground, and I'm yelling, "Go down and hold on to the ball."
That's a problem too. All right, let's do this. Let's get our first break in. We're chatting with former U.S. Attorney Andy Luger, and we decided to start with the football talk because I know it was in him, and he wanted to get it out. So we'll do that, or we have done that, and now we're going to get into some other issues, his reaction to a couple of pretty timely stories. Some of those stories he has been very closely connected to over the last several years. So we'll do that as we have Andy until the top of the hour. Russo Radio. You ever been a hockey guy? You ever been a puckhead?
Not once.
Really?
I can't.
It's the state of hockey.
I know, and that's a problem. Yeah. I can't skate. I've tried. I literally can't skate. So watching people fly around on skates.
Is it impressive to you?
It like sends,
okay.
It makes me anxious because I can't do it.
Because you can't do it.
I can go out on a football field and knock somebody down or get knocked down.
Which you've done.
For 10 years. I can hit a baseball. I can I can shoot a free throw.
Right.
I can't do that.
So it's not relatable.
I can't relate to it, and it makes me anxious.
Fair enough. The toy department section of our conversation with Andy, I think, is pretty close to done. We'll come back and talk other matters next.
Sunday's matchup with Washington is almost here. You can find our street team on the plaza outside U.S. Bank Stadium. Ask how you can win Papa Murphy's game day meal deals for an entire year. More info at KFAN.com. The keyword is calendar.
You're getting ripped, Andy Luger, by Gary the mailman, who writes, from Albert Lee for the record.
Okay.
Gary the mailman loves this weather. So he's saying he really does embrace it.
You know
really
what?
Does love
God bless him. I want to be clear. If people love this weather, great.
Okay.
If people love hockey,
it sounded like you're almost resentful of them for loving it.
I'm not.
No, you're not. Okay. You're just saying you can't love it, and you're not going to pretend.
The first time I saw, ice fishing huts on the lake, was it Bemidji it was at? I almost fell over. But God bless. I'm a libertarian at heart. Do what you love. Do what you want to do.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Whether it's hockey or ice fishing or whatever it is.
Okay, so where should we begin? We had Kessler in here yesterday, and a lot of what we talked about was a story that was breaking yesterday afternoon, actually. We seem to have indication that ICE is going to come in here pretty aggressively pretty soon. Maybe I've missed something. They're already here today. Attempting to target the Somali population. And then there was a headline indicating that the police chief of the city of Minneapolis said, our advice is call 911 if you find yourself in any kind of, I guess, confrontation with ICE, which struck me as the recipe for some potentially really dangerous situations here. What do you make of this?
So two things. One, I'm worried. We don't need a repeat of what happened in June 2020. This city really doesn't deserve to go through what we went through before. We're coming together in so many ways. We're finding our way forward after the horrific events of the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd. That's number one. But number two is we're getting off target. The conversation we should be having, and the conversation we were starting to have, is one, how do Somali community leaders deal with this level of fraud? Not because we're blaming the entire community, because nobody should, and I'm never going to do that. But leaders need to embrace the problem, talk about it, have conversations with law enforcement. There needs to be some response to this. And that's number one. Number two is talking about the solutions to what happened. And, we're going to enter into a campaign season. There are going to be all these recriminations about what happened. We should be having a sober but aggressive conversation about how to fix it. And once these guys who I don't know published their story about Al-Shabaab money,
yep.
That the money went to Al-Shabaab, which I'll talk about, we completely went off track. And just as a career person working in law enforcement as a prosecutor, the left and the right both do this. Law enforcement and prosecutors do a great job identifying a problem, prosecuting, investigating, exposing a problem, and then people take it and run with it politically. And we lose the thread. And that's what the moment I saw that story, and now we got to investigate whether the money went to Al-Shabaab, that's almost entirely nonsense. We investigated the money. And unless something's happened in the months that I've been gone, we know where the money went. It's fraud money. These were guys committing fraud. They want to get rich.
It's about greed.
Yeah. They want to buy houses. They were living in a cramped apartment day one. Mm-hmm. They've got a Lexus and a Mercedes-Benz and a $2 million house the next day. That's what it is. But all of a sudden, somebody alleges without any evidence that, it was going to fund terrorism. That sets us off track. Then it becomes about the Somali community supporting terrorism. We're gone. We're off down a side road. And the left does this too, and I hate it.
Here's what's interesting. I looked up, I found this via MinPost. This is from 2016.
Okay.
Here's your headline. Witness for the prosecution, U.S. Attorney Andrew Luger on ISIL verdict, the Somali community, and the media. And it did remind me that you actually do have some experience when it comes to prosecuting in cases in which what you were able to prove in court was that there was a terrorist connection, correct?
Yeah.
Different case, but you do have some history with this. I bring it up again to make the point that you're not afraid to talk about it when you feel the evidence suggests that's the story.
We have the biggest ISIS conspiracy case in the country right here. And I ran that investigation, great prosecutors, great FBI agents. Nobody was afraid of anything. We dove into that. We addressed it. We prosecuted it. I met with Somali community leaders repeatedly to talk about solutions. That's not this. And it's sort of just frustrating. And maybe, I wanted to talk about this. It's frustrating when left, right, activists, politicians, whatever they are, take something that people are working on and doing a great job with it and go off on a tangent, and everybody follows that tangent. And I've had it on both sides.
So I want to read a couple comments from. This is from I think a right-leaning publication called City Journal.
Yeah, that's the one.
And by the way, for the record, I want to check these numbers with you because I think these are up to date. Indictments in the Feeding Our Future case have now been brought against 78 defendants. The newest of the 78 cases was charged on November 24. The 78 indictments have resulted in 7 guilty verdicts, 2 acquittals, 50 guilty pleas, and 5 fugitives, with 1 deceased defendant. 13 unresolved cases await trial. Does that sound about right to you? Pretty accurate?
It does.
For the record. Now, here's what he writes. Records show that the defendants sent millions of dollars to Kenya and China. They also sent money to Somalia, mostly in cash. Al-Shabaab controls large portions of Somalia and collects a mafia-style street tax on all financial transactions in areas under its control. And in this way, some of the Feeding Our Future and other fraud proceeds likely ended up in the hands of Al-Shabaab, which he says would be outrageous. However, he adds this. There is no evidence that the perpetrators in these cases intentionally directed money to Al-Shabaab or any other terrorist organization. The defendants were not looking to fund terrorism, but to enrich themselves and fund their lifestyles. Does that sound right?
Is that the...
Scott Johnson wrote this.
That's Scott. So Scott writes for Powerline.
Okay.
I know Scott well. He covered this very closely. And Scott is pushing back on that original story. He's a great guy, very smart, very conservative, but I respect him, disagree with him, but I respect him. Scott knows that these guys weren't terrorists. And so the original story in the City Journal,
exactly. Yes, that
apparently sort of got this wave going. Now we're investigating this and new calls for investigations, et cetera. And there are a number of problems with it. And it's the same problem that I saw on the left when I was U.S. attorney, and I would get, you need to investigate X. People think they know something or they suspect something. They call for investigations. And they never say who's going to do the investigation. So, and they never say when those people are doing your new investigation into something for which there's no evidence, what are the cases they're not working on? Who are the really bad guys that we know about who are not getting prosecuted because we're going down a rabbit hole? And that's what's happening here.
So in effect, what you're coming back to again is keep your eye on the ball. There's enough there to go after. But you cheapen those cases if you pretend this is one of those cases.
Right. And it has a demoralizing effect on the people who are working on the cases. I know that not from this, but from past experience.
All right. I'm looking at the headline here. I want to get your reaction to. In fact, we had a couple of texters who wanted to get into this as well.
Yeah.
A judge in Minnesota is facing heat after she overturned a guilty verdict for an individual convicted in a $7.2 million fraud scheme that involved taxpayer money. Abdi Fattah Yusuf and his wife were charged in June 2024 after they were accused of stealing $7.2 million from the state's Medicaid program while running a home healthcare business that lacked an office building and operated for years out of a mailbox, according to the Minnesota Attorney General's office. Now, there's obviously been a lot of pushback to the judge in this case, basically, as I understand it, vacating, saying that there was too much, that the judge was troubled by the manner in which the fraud was able to be perpetuated, but that the case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, adding that the state didn't rule out other potential reasonable inferences. What do you know about this case?
Not much more than that. So I can't criticize the ruling, but I can comment as follows. I've been a prosecutor on and off since 1989 and a defense lawyer in between. I only know of two other cases where judges overturned a jury verdict. Both of those cases were reversed on appeal because it's not for the judge in general to decide inferences and circumstantial evidence that you instruct a jury with the fact that circumstantial evidence is has the same weight as direct evidence. So I've had plenty of circumstantial evidence cases. I had a mafia case back in Brooklyn, little mafia case back in Brooklyn that was all based on...
It sounds like a contradiction in terms, little mafia cases.
Well, the guy was it wasn't... they have levels.
The level of wise guys,
right,
he was not that high on the pecking order?
He was barely a wise guy. He was more like a wise kid. And he wasn't all that wise.
Right.
But it was all circumstantial evidence because I couldn't get anybody to testify. And so it was all based on circumstantial evidence. That's not that unusual. And you don't have to disprove other inferences. You've got to show beyond a reasonable doubt that this person did it based on the evidence. And a jury thought that. So I find it troubling, but I don't know the specifics of the case.
Enough.
I don't know the judge, and I haven't read the opinion.
Yeah, because this wasn't one of your cases.
No.
Exactly.
And, it's like, so that's my... It's very, very, very rare and should be very rare. I really believe in juries. I'm one of those people who think that juries get it right most of the time. And I've seen it, even in cases I've lost.
I've heard almost those exact same words from the late, great Ron Rosenbaum. He used to tell me that over and over again as well. He very much believes in juries, not that they're perfect, but that he does tend to believe in them.
Yep. And Ron lost his share of cases, too.
Yeah, exactly. The New York Times story, which covered a lot of ground that really has been reported locally and regionally, but kind of put it in a big box, and it's the New York Times. So obviously it's going to get a significant amount of attention. In fact, let me see if I can find the headline. How fraud swamped Minnesota's social services system on Tim Walz's watch. Now, a couple things I want to get your reaction to within the piece. Some of this I think you and I have discussed before, but I want to get back to it. There's a quote, one of the individuals quoted in this piece is named Kasey Magan. I hope I'm not mangling that name, described as a Somali American who formerly worked as a fraud investigator for the Minnesota Attorney General's office. And this individual said elected officials in the state were reluctant to take more assertive action in response to allegations of the Somali community. The suggestion here, here's what he said. There is a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash among the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc for Democrats, said Mr. Magan, who is among the few prominent figures in the Somali community to speak out about the fraud. Do you believe that is part of this story that should be continued to be explored?
Well, everything should be explored. I don't, but I'll tell you why. What I think, it's a variant of that, but what I have seen is a fear of being labeled a racist.
Which we have discussed before. I was going there next, but go ahead.
That's more of what I've seen, because I did see people speaking out about this. There was a lawsuit filed. The people who ran Feeding Our Future were very aggressive, going after anybody who challenged them and getting support for their cause. Not because we're going to lobby Democrats and they're going to, go with us, but accusing people of being racist if they challenge what Feeding Our Future was doing and others. I called that out when I was still U.S. Attorney.
You did. You called it out with us the last time you were on.
And I think those days are over because I think people see it for what it is. And I think it's going to be very hard to do that ever again. That doesn't mean you go after the whole Somali community. Absolutely. It doesn't mean, everybody is involved is involved in fraud. It just means don't come to me saying I'm a racist if I'm asking questions about your business.
To your point,
those days are over.
In the Times piece, in an email, the group Feeding Our Future told the state agency, this is Minnesota Department of Education officials, that failing to promptly approve new applicants from, quote, minority-owned businesses, unquote, would result in a lawsuit featuring accusations of racism that would be, quote, sprawled across the news.
And that's what they did. And they did that lawsuit. And people rightly, maybe we talked about this. You're a mid-level manager at one of these departments overseeing this stuff. And how do you feel about sitting in a deposition being accused of racism?
Not good.
Not good. And is that worth it to you? Does that have a chilling effect on you? I think it does.
We we need to have more fearless officials in that regard, though, right? Because that did absolutely contribute to this situation, and I don't think enough people, you have, but I don't think enough people have owned up to that. That's part of the problem, I think, where people get cynical about, well, how is it ever really going to change if there's not an admission or two from other people to say, yeah, that is part of what contributed to how long this went on before the alarm bells went off.
Well, I think we're over it, and maybe I'm naive, but I saw it. I called it out. They tried the same thing, if people remember, when they went and bribed a juror.
Yes, that's true. You're right.
Part of the instructions, and I went on about this at length when we indicted the people who were part of that conspiracy. They wrote instructions for the juror, and 3 separate times in the one page of instructions were, these people are all racist. This is a racist investigation. It's a racist prosecution. That was the mindset. We get away with saying that. And I stood up at the press conference when we indicted these guys and said, these days are over. Stop it. Nobody should fall for this nonsense ever again, and call it out. And I really do think it ain't going to work going forward. Whoever is governor, whoever is in these agencies.
Right. Another individual quoted in this piece, I want to get your reaction to a couple things he said. Ahmed Samatar, a professor at McAllister, described in this piece as a leading expert in Somali studies, said a reckoning over the fraud and its consequences for Minnesota was overdue. Quote, American society and the denizens of the state of Minnesota have been extremely good to Somalis, said Dr. Samatar, who is Somali American. Dr. Samatar said that Somali refugees who came to the United States after their country's civil war were raised in a culture in which stealing from the country's dysfunctional and corrupt government was widespread. Minnesota, he said, proved susceptible to a rampant fraud because it is, quote, so tolerant, so open, and so geared toward keeping an eye on the weak. Now, there's a lot there, too, because you have been one of the few people, you are very precise to make sure you do not blame an entire community. But the last time you were on, you got specific about whether there was something within one element of the culture that contributes to this sort of the remarkable number of individuals who have been prosecuted in this case. And that, to me, is what the professor seems to be saying. And I'll say again, I don't think enough people, there's too many people afraid that if they even go that far, you're broad brush, you're Trump on this, you want to just, everybody who has any sort of Somali in their blood, you want them out of here.
I think that's what we're losing right now with with the ICE stuff and the Al-Shabaab stuff. We've lost the focus. So there estimate between 60 and 80,000 people of Somali descent in Minnesota. I interact with people of Somali descent at the doctor's office, you name it. None of them are involved in fraud. None of them have anything to do with any of this stuff. There is an element within this community, and there are in other ethnic communities. I prosecuted cases on the East Coast, all within one, ethnic community, who are engaged in this. And they sought each other out. They went to their friends, their neighbors, and they said, let's do this. We're all going to get rich. And they did. But that doesn't have anything to do with if it's 200 people, then you've got 79,200 people who are not. So go to the leaders in the community, as we did with the ISIS stuff. Have conversations, not accusations, conversations about where is this coming from? Why are people doing this? Call it out, stamp it down, say we will not tolerate this. And I think that was about to happen. I think all that went underground now.
We are chatting with former U.S. Attorney Andy Luger. Let's do this. Let's get one more break in. I got a lot more ground to cover. We're going to try to cover as much as we can. Some good texts are coming in as well. And there's definitely a couple of developments in this story, or I guess stories that are kind of connected to this story that I want to get Andy's reaction to. So we'll still have time to do that. We will talk about Andy's favorite sport, hockey, at the top of the 5 o'clock hour with Michael Russo. Russo Radio starts then. We are back with former U.S. Attorney Andy Luger, Russo Radio, top of the hour. This question, well, it's not a question, it's an observation from the text line, speaks for a few other people. And it's hard to know how you might want to respond to it, or either of us might want to respond to it because it's so general. But he's listening, and here's what he writes. You are all afraid to speak the truth. And I wish 651, I think he knows what he thinks the truth is, but he needs to articulate what he believes that truth is and what we are afraid of, what you are afraid of in terms of your pretty consistent criticism of the level of fraud, certainly starting with Feeding Our Future, with some other cases as well, that's taking place. So, and getting specific about even within one aspect of the Somali culture, getting into this, calling out the folks who basically were called off of this stuff, were afraid because they thought they were going to be called racist. So I don't know what, is there something you're holding back from us that you want to now confess? I'm not known for holding back. I didn't think so. And I'm not known for being afraid to tell the truth. But I appreciate that because that shows a side of me that I'll incorporate. I don't know. Well, if he's got a specific, tell me, and then we'll pass it along. I'm happy to. 100%. Yeah. I know you try to be an equal opportunity, I think, ripper about politics because you think that's the future. And part of the reason we're in the position we're in is we got people who refuse to call out, quote unquote, their side because it gives sustenance to the enemy. And it's a road we've discussed on this show many times, with and without you. But I have to try this on you, and you tell me where you disagree. The governor was on Meet the Press, I think this past Sunday, asked by the host if he takes responsibility for widespread fraud discovered in some Minnesota social service programs. Here was the Wall's answer. I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Now, I got to tell you, Andy, that's pretty rich to me, okay? Because we can argue about how much responsibility a governor has in some of these cases if we want, but it takes some gall to say, one thing I am going to take credit for is we're putting them away. He didn't put them away. your office, through a couple of administrations, put them away. So shouldn't that be a little bit of troubling even to you as a Democrat?
So here's for 651 guy.
Okay.
I don't want to be in the middle of this political fight because whatever I say gets blown up and used in all sorts of ways I can't control. I want to let the people who are engaged in this fight have the fight.
Okay.
And criticize each other and call each other out and do that. I prosecuted this case. I lived this case with an amazing team of people at the FBI, the IRS, the postal inspectors, and my office, all of whom are heroes to me. I don't want to be in the middle of the politics on this. I just don't. It's not because I'm afraid. It's because I don't want to do it.
Okay. I think then I'll say I just think it was an extremely bad look. And I don't know what the line is, but I don't think he's found it. And I do think he's vulnerable, and he should be, in my opinion. Now, let me ask you about, I have some of the details on this case, but I don't know that I have all of them, but it's coming up again. Minnesota judge told the state's Department of Education that it had a real problem after the agency suspended payments to an organization before federal prosecutors uncovered a fraud scheme that has now resulted in charges for 78 individuals. In 2022, this is according to a Newsweek story, but there are other, accounts. Walz said a judge ordered the state to continue making payments to Feeding Our Future. Now, I thought I saw, in fact, here's the statement in 2022. Feeding Our Future demanded that MDE make payments, and the court made it clear that if MDE were to continue the legal fight to withhold those payments, MDE would incur sanctions and legal penalties. I thought this week I saw a response from that court's office saying that is factually incorrect. Can you shed some light on this?
Yeah, and I'll go back to when it happened. So I know the judge, a good judge in Ramsey County. What he said, if you read the opinion, is you haven't presented evidence of fraud. You've presented evidence of sort of paperwork problems, and I'm not going to allow you to stop payment on that basis. So it wasn't as though he said, I don't see any fraud, I don't care about fraud, make the payments. My recollection of his opinion and what he said in court was, without you presenting evidence of fraud, this other stuff that you're claiming, that they're not getting their paperwork in on time. And then MDE said, well, we'll work with Feeding Our Future to improve the process. So this wasn't about fraud. That's my recollection.
Okay.
He's a good judge. He was a good judge. I think people went after him incorrectly, and I think people realized that after the fact.
Well, but does that then give a little bit of, I guess you say, interference in their favor to the administration saying, look, when we tried to put up a couple of red flags, a judge left us with no choice?
I don't think it's that simple. I think what really happened here is the racism angle came up, and people reacted to that who were litigating. That's my take on it. It was who wants to be labeled a racist.
Okay.
I go back to that because I think that played a big role here. Not, we want votes from people or whatever.
Under the classification of, is this throwing out the baby with the bathwater? Here's the headline. This is from a couple days ago. Using anti-fraud powers, Minnesota DHS sets 2-year ban on new group home licenses. They've ordered a 2-year ban. These are programs designed to help people with disabilities live in their communities. The department will stop issuing new home and community-based services licenses, stop accepting any new license applications, cancel existing license applications, and prevent any licensed providers from adding new services. Orders to take effect next month. And this is viewed as, all right, we got to put some safeguards in place. Is this a bridge too far, or is this a fair and inevitable based on the last several years?
It's probably fair and inevitable, but I don't know. I mean, this was a program that was really riddled with fraud. So can you get in there and try to fix it fix the plane while you're flying it?
Yeah,
or do you have to just land it and put it down? What I always say, and these are the kinds of conversations I have all the time, not on the radio with you, but other people. I've never run a state agency, so I don't know. And I'm not looking to either, so don't nominate me. But I don't know if you can fix this while you fly it, or if people have to kind of endure some pain so we can fix it. And that's a judgment call. It's a tough call. But the consequence of this kind of fraud is there will be people who won't get services that they need and deserve.
I'm looking also in our final minutes.
You got a lot of headlines.
There's a lot of stuff, man. There's a lot of stuff to cover, and we could do another whole hour. But unfortunately, we got to talk hockey. Much to your chagrin at the top of the hour.
And God bless everybody who wants to hear that.
Ryan, your guy Ryan Pasiga. You know Ryan Pasiga pretty well.
Yeah.
One of his quotes from the Times piece is getting a lot of attention. Oh. No one was doing anything about the red flags. It was like someone was stealing money from the cookie jar, and they kept refilling it. And I think to varying degrees, we've talked about this before. Is that pretty much, does that capture it?
Yes and no. Nothing is that. Good for Ryan, but nothing is that. It's a good quote, and,
you attorneys have to, you're smart enough to know you have to have sometimes pithy quotes to get attention, correct?
I follow in the footsteps of Joe Friedberg.
Yes, you do.
So it's not that simple, because there were people early on who saw the problem. Mm-hmm. They raised it. The Feeding Our Future people hired lawyers. They went after them. They called them racists. I'm repeating what I said before. So it's not like everybody was sort of blind to this. When you go from 0 to 60 and are start collecting $1 million a month out of nowhere, people notice and they saw it. I'm not making excuses for them. I'm not making excuses for anybody. It's just that it's a little too much to say nobody was paying attention, because there were people, and I admire those people. Some of them have testified in the trials. So I just pull back a little bit from what Ryan was saying, in his Joe Friedberg moment.
Lastly, I'm looking, and I don't know how much you know about this, but it got a lot of attention. Employees with the Minnesota Department of Human Services, I think they had their own X handle, Twitter handle, and they went hard in the wake of the New York Times story, surfacing, saying that there was great failure, the lack of accountability, and they among the allegations here, as staff, we firsthand witnessed and observed fraud happening, yet we were shut down, reassigned, told to keep quiet, sometimes more. So those are really serious charges, which to me need to be investigated. And again, follow the story. If they're not legit, let's get to them and see where they break down. But what did you make of that? And are you concerned about what was offered there?
Well, if true, it's deeply concerning. If it's not true, then it's another sideshow. And I don't know who wrote it. I don't know who they are. They did not come to us when I was U.S. attorney. And I read that multiple times. I have no way of knowing if one person wrote it, a committee wrote it, whether they're hundreds or two, whether they're here, whether they're in Russia. I just don't know. And if people were really harmed by this kind of conduct, then come forward, get protection, and get your rights addressed. But that never came. I was doing this for 3 years. I never heard a word of that. Again, doesn't mean it didn't happen. Doesn't mean they had an obligation to come to me. I don't think they've come to the U.S. Attorney's Office since I left. If they have, okay. And that's the only way I can address it. But without somebody saying it happened to me and here are the specifics, these are very general allegations, I don't know where you go with it. So how do you investigate it? Maybe they'll come forward to somebody. But other than just putting it out there anonymously, I don't know what you do with it.
I wish we had more time. Another good conversation today. We keep saying this because we always run out of time. We have to get your best Joe Friedberg story next time. Maybe one of your best Ron Rosenbaum stories as well. Because I think you got a couple.
I do. I have 2 stories about each of them.
Oh, that's it. Well, then maybe one of these times we will ignore the headlines, which is hard to do.
You read me all these quotes and these headlines, and I got to off the cuff. I've got to respond. And 651 guy says I'm holding back.
That's it. It's maybe 651 guy will contact you directly. I don't know. It's okay too.
I'm in the book.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks. Dan.
Thanks for coming. Always a pleasure, and we'll talk soon.
Appreciate it.
Former U.S. Attorney Andy Luger, kind enough to join us in studio for a terrific hour. We'll come back and talk hockey. As I said, your red-hot Minnesota Wild back in action tonight. Russo's not there, but he still has a lot to say about your favorite club. That's next.